Record now. Okay, so I'm recording. If you don't want to be visible, then you can hide yourself. Okay, hi. So I'm just going to very briefly go around and introduce the people that are on here. We have Joy. I cannot pronounce your name, but you are on mute, so I'm going to unmute you. Unmute. Joy, can you please pronounce your name?
Yes, and it's pronounced just like it's spelled, Lanzerotte.
Yeah.
Every letter is pronounced. Every letter.
Lanzerotte, Joy Lanzerotte. She's a longtime yoga teacher, and she has led teacher training programs. There is also Joseph Roberson on here, and Joe is also a longtime yoga teacher who has led teacher training programs. And we have Matt Lerner, who is a longtime yoga teacher, and he has also led yoga teacher training programs. Right? Correct? Yeah. Yes, and he is the head of a newfound group on Facebook for people who are supporters of the Yoga Alliance. Okay, so first of all, did you think that would be valuable to somebody? Do you think I was like too slanted one way or the other?
You're pretty on it. There was a couple of small mistakes. I didn't have my notepad out when you said them, so I don't know if I'll be able to read them.
I can put some notes up on the recording so that I tried to like research it today to make sure it was accurate. And but I can also put up little like show cards on the video when I post it to YouTube to sort of say like I've learned since then, you know, that this was untrue.
The ethics. There is a code of conduct with Yoga Alliance.
There is. It's not, but there's no enforcement. Like I listened to that podcast you were talking about, and basically they are not enforcing it on individual teachers. They're enforcing it on studios.
I think that's probably correct. But I have heard of teachers getting pulled, their RYTs being pulled, but it's not really. But yeah, they do have a listing, and they insist that your school has one that you put out for your teachers and that you discuss it.
Yeah, they do, and they have that. It is in those requirements that they discuss that. I think it's something like 5 hours or something, 10 hours that have to be spent specifically on ethics.
Oh no, it's like one. I don't think there's any minimum hour.
It's there. I know I read those requirements. I went through. But, you know, I mean, it's great that they're discussing it. But the reason I put it in there is that it's a reason that people join organizations. And like if you join certain organizations, it kind of like shows that you're a member in good standing. And I just wanted people to know, like, there are issues with yoga teachers and their ethics, and that the Yoga Alliance is not doing it's not doing a whole lot about it. And so having that credential doesn't really show people that you are an ethical person. I mean, it's great that you had the training, but if there isn't a mechanism to enforce it, then, you know, you can tell me to be a good person, but no, there needs to be some enforcement of it. I'm not necessarily advocating that they do enforce it. I'm just saying that people may expect that is happening, and it's not. Like my actual personal experience with this was that there was a teacher who fraudulently used the Yoga Alliance's name. Like there could not have been like a person more like, you know, that they would be more likely to take her name off their website than somebody who is actually fraudulently using their own name. Many, many teachers in that town called and spoke with them about it, and they said, we will not take the name off the registry.
Well, that's the type of thing that I think does need to be fixed, which is reasons
I agree. I mean, I don't necessarily. I honestly, I don't necessarily agree that they need to be in that game. all I wanted was for people to know that that isn't something that they're going to get from that credential. Like I think people come in and they think like, oh, I'm licensed. Like people who haven't gotten their RYT, they can't teach. I think people come in and they think, oh, you know, this really means something. Like I've got this designation. It really shows people like I'm part of this, you know, like this industry organization. And I really wanted them to see like, this is what it is. This is what you get. You know, like if you're expecting to see the kinds of things that you see in big industry trade groups, like, you know, a local meetup group that they sponsor speakers, you know, people expect that. They join and they expect it. And I want them to know what they are getting into. You know, whether we think that that's what the Yoga Alliance should be doing, I just want people to know what they actually are doing. Like, I think that the advocacy on legal stuff, you know, I think that's really where they spend a lot of their money. I mean, that's what, what's his name was talking about on the Jay Brown podcast. He was saying, like, we spend a lot of money on this. And I think that a lot of yoga teachers think that they're wasting their money when they join. You know, it is important that they're advocating for that, but it's not necessarily what people think a trade organization does. Joe.
That was interesting.
So you're not. Are you currently a member of the Yoga Alliance, Joe?
No, mine has lapsed. I stopped paying. It got to the point where after I began to see the RYT 200 as honestly being harmful to my marketing or whatever you want to call it, rather than helpful, because my designation is ERYT 200 doesn't reflect my experience or training or I tried to get Yoga Alliance. I applied for the 500, but I was really unhappy when things like, going to study with the Iyengars in India is not accepted, would not be accepted, and a lot of other things that I'd done, just they were not accepted.
Right. Yeah, the Iyengars, they don't know anything about yoga.
So the only way that I could get a 500 hour was to go pay, however many thousands of dollars to take a program, and I just wasn't going to do that.
Right.
It wasn't worth it to me. I did want to say that I think one thing that you left out about why people should get the 200, should get the RYT, you talked about yoga studios, and you talked about, being able to train teachers at studios. But in my experience, a lot of the value of having the ERYT or having the RYT credential is all about places that hire yoga teachers that have nothing to do with yoga, like companies, businesses, places that don't know how to hire a yoga teacher. And so they rely on that credential.
I was curious. I actually, I think I skipped it, or I missed that part of my dialogue, but I actually had prepared a thing that was just saying, like, if you want to teach at like a Y, or you want to teach at a community center or something like that, that they're just usually pretty happy just to have any kind of piece of paper that says you passed a teacher training program. They don't necessarily know to look for that RYT. And they're sometimes they may want to see like a piece of paper, but they don't necessarily, know that about RYT. So I was curious, do you think that there is like a larger, because you ran a teacher training program and I've never done that. Do you think that there's, a larger awareness in the world of RYT specifically versus just like, I graduated from a teacher training program and I have a piece of paper that shows that?
You've been saying something a little bit inconsistent with how most of the people that I know talk about it. And actually, this is one of the mistakes in your slide, is a school does not grant an RYT. A yoga school grants a certificate. And anyone who, a lot of people call themselves a CYT, a certified yoga teacher. And if you happen to get certified by a RYS, registered yoga school, Yoga Alliance approved school, you are able to apply for.
Sorry, you're going mute.
What's that?
Your audio cut out. So can you just repeat that?
Okay, how far back?
I don't know. It was just maybe a little Wi-Fi glitch.
So what I was saying is that a school grants a certificate, and a lot of people call themselves a CYT, or a certified yoga teacher.
Okay.
Person gets a certificate from an RYS, which is a registered yoga school. They are eligible to become an RYT by going through the registration process, and it's like a $50 initiation fee, and then a $50 a year after that. And then there's certain requirements for them to continuing education, etc. But so the RYT is it's a credential, but the certificate is a diploma. That's also a credential.
Okay.
So, and I do think that in a yoga studio environment, it is much other than that. You're trying to uphold some sort of standard, but any yoga that the reasonable yoga teacher or not. But someone like if a YMCA is hiring them, or a corporate yoga program's hiring somebody.
You're cutting in it. Your audio is cutting in and out.
That's too bad.
Yeah, I don't know what's going on. It could just be, like I said, like Wi-Fi, but let me just see if I'm hearing what you're saying in between the lines, which is that, first of all, that the Yoga Alliance is the one that gives out the RYT, not the teacher training programs, technically, but it's like, there's not like people who like apply with their certificate from an approved training program and somehow don't get their RYT.
That's correct.
I mean, in effect, it is the schools that are giving it out when they hand out the certificates, although there is a process,
No, you have to get that from Yoga Alliance. I mean,
yeah, you have to pay the fee and get on the website.
Yeah.
But I think it's a good clarification that just having that doesn't make you RYT. And then the other thing that you were saying is that the certification that you get when you graduate from a teacher training program is a credential, and that the RYT is an additional credential, so that if you're applying for these sort of local teaching jobs and community centers or businesses, that your certificate of completion of the program is a credential that shows that you've done the work.
Yeah, the Yoga Alliance does not certify teachers. Yoga Alliance certifies training programs. The program that you graduate from when they give you a certificate, that is your certification. And if that program is registered with Yoga Alliance, and I'm just basically repeating what Matt said, that you are certified by the school, and you are merely registered by Yoga Alliance to you can call it a certification because Yoga Alliance is certifying that the school meets the standards.
Yeah. And I also just want to clarify, because we keep using this word certification, and Joe and I are both instructional designers, and in our field, certification has a more specific meaning. And so people say that it's like, I got a certificate, therefore I'm certified. But in teaching, when somebody is, like, for example, in other trade organizations, people say, I'm a certified, I'm a certified, what is it, like accountant, that means they passed a test, like they passed an industry test, or they passed some kind of independent evaluation. My sister is a board certified teacher of education. She used to teach elementary school. She got her board certification. To do that, she had to jump through all these hoops. She had to send in a tape of her teaching, and she had to go to the teaching board, an independent board. They reviewed her tape, and then they certified her as a teacher. And that's when we talk about certification in education and industry organizations, it generally means that either you pass some kind of standardized test or some kind of approval process. And a lot of times the certification programs do have some kind of independent program. So it's not just happening from, let's say, like, there's a conflict of interest with these yoga schools, is what I'm trying to get to. Like, these yoga schools, they're the ones making the money off of it. It's in their interest to give out diplomas. And that's the huge issue. There isn't somebody who comes in and says, no, that student really doesn't qualify. And somebody who paid $2,000 to the school, they're kind of expecting that piece of paper. And the requirements are pretty low. And, who's to say, like, who's coming in and saying, no, you can't give them that piece of paper? No one. There isn't anyone coming in and saying, you should not do that. I mean, not saying that they're not doing some things, but, there isn't a process, a mechanism in place.
And who
to create some kind of distance there.
Who would you want to do that?
I'm not saying that they should. I'm saying what that means when people say it.
Because the yoga community is quite different in the sense that, I teach asana, but I spend more of my time teaching meditation and yoga nidra, which is so very, very different than a hot Bikram yoga class or something like that.
Yeah, it's absolutely, we are not accountants. And that has been the issue. Educationally, I have a lot of solutions, and I don't want to get into that all here. However, I just want to make it clear, because I hear it so much. And there's that, when people hear certified in other fields, that can mean that you passed a very rigorous high bar. And that is not, there is no certification. There's no official certification in yoga.
So, Suzanne?
Yeah.
I think what you're trying to get across, I think the problem stems largely from the fact that, like you said, the only way to make a real living as a yoga teacher is to train teachers. And therefore, there is a vested interest in pumping out new yoga teachers.
Mm-hmm.
And therefore, the bar for graduating yoga teachers is very low, because you basically, there's a big motivation to get anybody in the door who will pay you for their training. And there's a big motivation to pump out more and more teachers, because, back when I was doing it, yoga teacher training was 3/4 of my income.
Right. That's
And
exactly it.
that's the fact of life. And that is what, if you want to give a cautionary help to people who are interested in yoga teacher training, that's the one I think you should give, that they need to understand what the game is.
Right. Yes, exactly. That is a game. And there isn't any kind of internal mechanism in place. Like, Matt, like you had told me, to listen to that podcast with Jay Brown. And I'm trying to remember his name, who was on from the Yoga Alliance, which I had actually previously listened to that. I did listen to it again today, and they talk about the fact that they are sort of doing this social credentialing program, and that they're sort of kicking some of the bad schools out, that the people that are really getting low credentials, which is great to hear. But what I'm saying is there isn't some kind of like every single teacher that comes through has to somehow pass some kind of independent verification. And there's a ton of ways to do it. And everybody somehow thinks that the only way to do it is to give like some kind of SAT like test. But there's a million ways that they could set it up where, just the minimum standard, bring in another teacher from your school who has to watch the people teach and sign off. That is such a low thing that they could do. Just, bring in a lead teacher whose name is going to be on the piece of paper. Somebody who hasn't been teaching those people. Just the littlest, it's not, everybody kind of thinks like somehow like it has to be like the industry test that's like barcoded and bubble fill in. Like that's not how they do educational teachers in school. They send in a tape and that's reviewed. There are ways to assess training other than a test.
There are quite a lot of things that you could put on the list of things that Yoga Alliance could do. You got to keep in mind that all of those things are going to cost the community more money, and a lot of people complain about the dues to Yoga Alliance right now, which I don't quite get because of $50. It's not such a big deal, I don't think, but I have a day job. I don't make my teaching from yoga, so that's different. But that's not really a reason to not get a RYT. You're talking, it's a good topic. I don't know if it's in with what you originally were.
What I mean is that people expect it because they hear that.
You're comparing yoga teaching to being an exercise instructor at a gym, probably more than you are like my wife's a registered nurse. Well, when she went to college, she got a Bachelor of Science in Nursing, and that wasn't 200 hours. That was what? Probably about 8,000 hours. It's not the same thing, and you don't come out of it and get a job like that. Most yoga teachers aren't making a living at teaching yoga. Most yoga teachers are doing it because it's more of a calling. It's something they're interested in. Many of them have a spouse that's supporting them, etc. Or they're doing it as a hobby, or they're doing it for fun, or they're doing it because they love doing it. There are some people that do make money at it, and yes, studios do make money through having a teacher training program. There's no denying that. But I'm in Ohio, so I'm not on either one of the coasts where it's really hot and intense. But there are a lot of good yoga schools around here. None of the ones that I know of are in that diploma mill category. They're all run by people that love yoga. They put their heart and minds into it, and that's what makes their programs good, and that's what makes their teachers good. One of the things we have on our website is we say that 200 hours is not enough to make you a good yoga teacher, but it is enough if you have a background. You said something before about, and this is one thing that Yoga Alliance should change, I agree, is that there should be some prerequisites to it. We have a prerequisite in our program. We'll waive it occasionally if the person seems to be sincere enough or have other attributes that make up for it. But basically we say you should be having a regular yoga practice for 2 years before you have an interest in being a teacher trainer. And our program happens to take about 2 years. We do it 2 hours a week for 2 years rather than all at once over 3 weeks. So, I mean, we get to know our students really well. We're more of a yoga apprenticeship, but I don't want to get into that. There's a lot of good ways to do a program. Someone with a good background in yoga can come in and do one of those 3 or 4 week immersions and get a reasonable training, learning how to teach their particular issues that they won't, but it is hard to absorb it all when it comes in that quickly. But there are different formats that work. So anyway, we say that the 200 hours is not enough to make you a good yoga teacher, but it is enough to make you a safe yoga teacher, to do a very limited amount of teaching, but you can go out and teach, and it's a place to start your career from and continue learning from. If you don't go on with your education after that point, you're not really going to be much of a yoga teacher unless you have a huge background in it. And like I appreciate what you said, how you didn't want to do the continuing education from a formal standpoint with Yoga Alliance, but I'm sure that you've been involved in lots of ongoing education, just like you are right now.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I mean, I for me personally, that's why I was just explaining that for me personally, it's like Joe was saying, you know, we kind of were in that like gap in where they introduced it, you know, after we had already gotten so much training. And so, you know, I don't need, you know, an ERYT for people to know who I am. But let me put it this way. I don't think of yoga as being like teaching aerobics. I think of yoga as being like ballet. It is a refined skill. I would not expect to go to a ballet school and have somebody teach me ballet who had only taken a course to teach ballet. I would expect even a teacher who was teaching beginning ballet to little kids to have actually danced in her life, you know, like gone and practiced some dance before learning to be a teacher, because it's a body, it's a refined body skill.
I don't know that that's really an issue. I know probably 100 yoga teachers pretty well personally, and probably another 100 or 2 beyond that. I don't know anyone that got into yoga teaching that wasn't already involved in yoga and very serious about it.
I do. I know lots of people who have taken teacher training programs who do not know anything about it.
That are already like an aerobics teacher at a gym and they want to get a certificate for yoga, and that's quite different than the types of yoga teachers that I know. I've heard of those. I don't know any of people like that. I literally know hundreds of people that all loved yoga and then they decided to go into teaching it. So I don't know what the stats are out there on that.
I had when I took my yoga teacher training program, this was all before I liked the Alliance, but I remember there was a woman in my class. I've been at that studio for like a long time. I was in their top level class. You know, I knew I was assisting. And there was a woman who showed up in my training. I'd never ever seen her before. And she was a doctor and she just decided she was interested in yoga. And I think she showed up for like half the classes. And I have no idea whether she got her piece of paper or not, but I mean, literally she had never taken yoga before.
Well, we get people in our classes, you know, we get 3 types of people. One is somebody who wants to be a yoga teacher. Yoga meant something to them and they want to be a yoga teacher. Another one is a yoga student who just wants to deepen their experience and think they'll learn a little bit more, which they will if they do that. And others, people that are just curious. And quite honestly, I think it's great that a doctor would come into yoga teacher training. I'd be a little disappointed if they decided to teach yoga without learning that skill proficiently. But that's a great thing for a doctor to do that, so that they could go out and then say, yeah, you should take some yoga. Don't take the hot yoga for your problem. Take the, you know, whatever they're going to say. So I don't have a problem with that, and there's a place for that. But I don't see that as a problem in the yoga industry. By the way, you mentioned something which I think are two, mentioned a number of problems with Yoga Alliance. I would add two more of them. One of them is that for somebody like I was able to get grandfathered into Yoga Alliance. As I said, I started my studying yoga in about 1975 and started subbing and doing a little bit of teaching in 76, and by 1979 I think I was training teachers at the Madison, Wisconsin, at a branch of the institute, and then when I moved back to Ohio, I've been training teachers since then, and I was able to get grandfathered into Yoga Alliance when it came along. There's a lot of people that missed that deadline when Yoga Alliance first became known, and the window on grandfathering, you had to have all your paperwork in by such and like someone like you.
Right. Well, because, like I studied with John Schumacher, I studied with, like the people I studied with, they had all been doing yoga for like 15, 20 years at least. And so that was my idea what a yoga teacher was. Like my idea of a yoga teacher was like, you're a superstar. And I just like, that's who I started studying with. I've never, ever had a teacher who had done yoga less than 15 years that I studied with, even when I first started practicing. And so when that came around, it didn't occur to me that I could possibly qualify to grandfather in as a yoga teacher when I had just passed my first teacher training program, even though I'd taken like workshops out the wazoo and studied with all these great teachers. I had no idea how low the standards were. And that just, that was part of the reason I didn't even look into it. I was like, oh, there's just no way that I could possibly qualify. Like, there's no way I'm like anywhere close to the experience that these people had.
Well, how much would you want a yoga teacher to have to study before they could start teaching? I mean, you say the standards are low, and I see a lot of people say that. I see people graduating.
I think that people should know it in their body, and they should be evaluated to have a certain skill based on educational standards of what a skill is. And there are, all you have to do is, Joe, you can help me here. What's the standard that I'm trying to think of, the learning taxonomy?
Yes. Bloom.
Hello?
Bloom's taxonomy.
Learning taxonomy. Joe, the learning taxonomy.
Well,
yeah.
Okay, now you put me on the spot. Synthesis. Basically that you, yeah, I'm sorry, I'm not following.
Here, I'll pull it up. Yoga. Instructional.
Actually, what I think this conversation is turning into is, well, I guess what I think it should be turning into is helping people know how to choose a good teacher training program.
Yeah.
Rather than whether it should be, YT or not, RYT or not. We talked a lot about the difference between a good one and a bad one.
This is how you evaluate movement according to educational theory.
Could I make some points?
Yes, I'd love for you to make some points.
I've been listening this whole time, and I'm thinking, I guess I just come at it from a very different perspective. There are two types of people that I think become yoga teachers. Those that want to deepen their yoga practice because they have found classes have somehow instilled in them a want to carry this whole approach into all aspects of their life. I have met those people, and I've counseled those people and talked to those people. And there are others who want to become yoga teachers. I've also seen, and I'm sure the two gentlemen have too, a real diversity in the type of credentialing that goes on. Whether it's LA Fitness, which is like a drive-through program, and I had a woman talk to me about a month ago. I'm a certified yoga teacher. Where did you go? I went through LA Fitness. Oh, did you have philosophy? No. Did you get Sanskrit? No. So how, and from my perspective, I came through, like all of you, a very, very grueling, not once, but 2 teacher training programs. I have over 7,000 hours in yoga. But it seems today, in order for studios to stay alive, they have to do exactly, I think it was John, what John said. Maybe it was Matt. I apologize because I can't see who it is. There's only a way that a studio can make rent. And it's by either selling a lot of stuff and offering teacher training. And I've been involved in 3 different teacher trainings, but there were 6 of us that participated in that. Whereas today, it's 2 people doing all of it. And I find that, for me, at this stage of my life in yoga, very discouraging. The Sanskrit is nil, or it's poorly pronounced. The philosophy is not weaved in. I did all my philosophy in Berkeley. And I don't see the commitment of a lot of people, not all, not generalities. I don't see the commitment from people going into teacher training. There's a group that are very much into the fad. Oh, when I grow up, I want to be a yoga teacher. I want to wear Lululemon. And this is the real thing. I'm a yoga junkie. And I have traveled throughout Phoenix the past 2 years doing every kind of yoga you can do. But it's like somebody said, my yin training was with Paul Greeley. And my restorative, and I'm blanking on her name, PhD, she's written all the books.
You studied with Lassiter, right? Judith Lassiter?
With who?
Judith Lassiter?
Yes, absolutely. Yes. But I mean, I sought out, like you all are sharing, extremely highly skilled teachers. And when I was going for my Anusara training, that was rigor. That was rigor. And Desiree Rumbaugh and Jimmy Barnhart, they observed and observed and observed. And I was a member of Yoga Alliance, and I will share this with both of you. I've got, maybe some of you are involved in this, I got a question, a survey. My opinion, as it related to ethics, about how I felt about a teacher being involved with one of their yoga students. And I'll be glad to share with you who the person was they were referencing, and it was Rodney Yee.
Okay.
And my comment was, I don't believe that your organization should be making adult decisions for people who make adult choices. If that is the intention, that has to be clear up front. That has to be included. But here I am, a member of Yoga Alliance, and now I'm thinking, wow, if I go out with a yoga student, I could be in jeopardy.
Well, actually, Yoga Alliance doesn't prohibit that. There's nothing in their code of conduct that prohibits that.
Exactly. But they were interviewing us, and I think this was 2001, that they were interviewing a cadre of us. And I had Ben Thomas, he was the director of our program, Iyengar, Senior Certified Iyengar. But, you know, it's, the other question that teachers ask about Yoga Alliance is, who are these people on this board? Who are they that make these decisions? I had to go in and I had to submit a plethora of information to them to be certified. I mean, I had to show every single hour. I had to divide it up, whether or not it was a class, whether it was a weekend, or whether it was teacher training. I had to submit a video. It was rigor. I had to go back to my teacher in St. Louis, Senior Certified Kripalu teacher, and have her send in all my information.
When was
this?
Rigor. When was this?
I started this in 2001.
Yeah,
2001.
I registered in 2001, and I remember jumping through the hoops to put together documentation, but I don't
Exactly.
know that,
Yeah, exactly. And I mean, I had columns where I had to divide up who the teachers were and whether my training was with Desiree Rumbauer or whether it was with a senior certified Anasara teacher or, I mean, and then it just was rigor.
Did you have a certificate?
Mm-hmm. I'm sorry?
Did you have a certificate? Not that this really matters to discuss, but did you have a certificate? I'm just wondering why mine wasn't quite as rigorous. I mean, it was a lot, but it wasn't what you're talking
I had certificates out the wazoo. Whether it was from Eric Schiffman, or whether it was from Desiree Rumbau, or whether it was from John Friend. I mean, just a lot of money to keep my credentials up. Like you said, I love what you said. Find a good teacher. Find, a teacher who is demanding. Iyengar may not give you a certificate, but when you come out of Iyengar's training, it is rigor. It is rigor to become an Iyengar teacher.
Yes.
And I felt the same way when I was going through Anasara. They would come and observe, and my Sanskrit at one point, they said, well, you're ready to be certified by us to get your approval, but your Sanskrit is not pure. And okay, but I was driven to do it.
So
I believe in yoga.
I have the total opposite experience. I thought all of the training programs that I took were pretty not like rigorous, and pretty much I'm sort of self-taught in a way because I just, as a member of the yoga discussion board, like, not to say I'm not self-taught, like, obviously you have to study with Eric, study with John Schumacher, and I not for teacher training, but, I studied with him. I studied with Don Afari teacher training. But as far as like this kind of rigorous program where somebody came in and said, like, you have to learn Sanskrit and it has to be pronounced correctly and, all that stuff. Like, I studied with Iyengar teachers and they were all those Iyengar teachers, they just know their stuff. Roger Cole, like, they know it. And I was expecting that. So I was kind of surprised in the training courses that I took. It was like the complete opposite experience. I've sort of self-educated myself because I just have a love for it. And, not to say that my training programs weren't valuable, but they certainly weren't like what you were describing, which was what I was expecting. I mean, training should be hard. It was. And it's expensive.
I'd get at 3. I lived in Menlo Park. I got on a train, 3:00 in the morning, San Francisco bus to the Castro. And for 5 straight days, 6 hours a day, I was in teacher training. And I did the same going to Berkeley, but I had no one to study with the Upanishads. And, I didn't have all that available. It was rigor. And they didn't cut any slack. Neither did my Kripalu teacher. They cut no slack. And I guess that's why I loved it. Because I felt when I came out of there, I know alignment, I know philosophy. I've gone through 3 anatomy classes with Kirk. And so, for me today, I think they've lowered the bar. And I don't know why, but I just think they've lowered the bar. I've seen a lot of places that just do 1 or 2 teachers and they do it all. And, I don't belong to Yoga Alliance anymore for the very reason I don't want to put the money out. I would rather put the money out and go for a retreat, which I'm going to be doing next month, a meditation yoga retreat at Mount Madonna, and build my own inside yoga program. But I don't need or want to pay money for Yoga Alliance to say I'm an okay teacher. If I'm not okay by now, then maybe I need to move on or take a break.
You're okay.
That's kind of where I am. I am.
You can say you're certified by me. I just want to mention that because not everybody could see on my screen, I flashed up a few things from learning. So as I've gotten into instructional design, I've really found a lot of solutions to the questions that I had about yoga teaching and how we can evaluate it and assess it. And what I showed up was the learning taxonomy for the psychomotor domain, and that is how people evaluate physical skill. And so when we say, should we be able to assess how to, whether somebody's ready for teacher training, well, there's an actual yardstick that's already been developed in educational theory for how you assess physical skill. And all we have to do is take the yardstick, and according to educational theory, somebody is not ready to teach until they have already mastered the subject. So all we need to do is be able to take that yardstick, measure whether people actually show the skill or the knowledge. If they're taking a system that isn't physical asana, if you're learning Sanskrit, you can do a test. So their education has the answers to this. And then I also showed this learning ladder, which is just like a really simplified way to explain to people how people learn. And what I did was, this isn't something that's out there, it's just something that I kind of boiled down out of a bunch of different learning taxonomies to show that there are steps that people take in the process of learning. And that you can't assess. This has been a huge issue in yoga. How can we know if somebody's really enlightened? Can we know if somebody's really knowledgeable? But the thing is that you can never know whether somebody knows something. What you can know is, does somebody demonstrate the skills that you've taught in that course? So if you've been teaching somebody and they've been coming to your class, do they know where to put their foot? Do they know how to pronounce the yoga posture names correctly? Do they understand what the yamas and niyamas are? Can they describe them? Those things are measurable. Can we measure whether somebody is a nice guy or not? No.
We could discuss whether things like Sanskrit are even important. I've been in discussions on that quite a bit.
Yeah, I agree.
But what I'm saying is that we don't all have to agree on what the bar is. We can simply agree that we use the appropriate yardsticks to measure learning.
Can I make a comment here? Am I on?
Yeah, you're on.
Okay. When I was part of teacher training in Palo Alto, and there were 6 of us involved, and each one of us had our teacher training behind us and all our certifications and everything, but we all had primary skill, something that was our forte. But there was an application that the students wanting to go into teacher training had to fill out ahead of time. I just remember that when you were talking about it, basic questions like, what is your intention for doing this? What do you want to walk away with? What are you committing to do? This is a very rigorous program. Have you read books about, yoga, philosophy? It was about an 8-page application.
Right.
And there were 7 of us, and of course the head of it was Ben Thomas, who was also on the Iyengar board in San Francisco. But, then we asked the students when they came in to pick one of us to primarily maybe want to study with. And then they came and started assisting in our classes, and then we mentored them outside of class in addition to the teacher training. And I guess the biggest thing that I heard when I was teaching, like I taught at Stanford Research Institute, was they wanted insurance. I had to carry $2 million liability. And that was the number one question I was asked everywhere I went in California to teach. Did I have insurance? And I had to have a minimum of $2 million. So I don't know if that's part of this too. And I don't know if the 2 gentlemen, Matt and John, have had to do that, but that was a big part. Of course, every state is different, It's not required in Arizona, that's for sure.
Put that in there, but it's a big reason that people think that they can only get insurance through the Yoga Alliance. And I should have put that in there because I've seen that a lot.
Right.
And maybe I'll put a note and later, when I edit that video. But I have seen many people come in and they're like, but if I left the alliance, how would I get insurance? They're not aware that they can just buy insurance.
That's a really good point, because I went to Christina Porcelona and Desiree, and I saluted the majority of the teachers. Who are they with? And it was a company out of Texas.
Alrighty. Well, I have a lot of work to do tomorrow in my day job. So I'm going to wind this up. But before we do, I just want to give Joe a chance to make some final comments, because he's been kind of quiet for the last little bit. And I see he's still on. So I just want to give you a quick chance to say your piece.
Yeah, I see he's muted.
He's still muted.
Just here, there, he just.
Oh, there he is.
I'm trying to get my screen back up here. I had my mouth full. That's why I muted myself.
I can send you an invite to enable your oh, there you are.
I think one of the main reasons that Yoga Alliance was created, if I remember correctly, was basically to fend off the push to require government intervention or regulation of yoga teachers. And you pointed to that when you talked about the Yoga Alliance spends a lot of money on pushing back against that.
Yeah,
and I think where we are now is sort of we're in sort of a middle ground where the yoga community has been able to avoid having to get state licenses like massage therapists do. And it's sort of a muddy mess in some ways, which is why we're having a conversation.
They're kind of a fake organization to pretend to be.
Yeah, but I guess the thing that I would want to add at the end here is just that, well, you know what? It's actually a good problem to have because it points to the fact that we're all, all four of us are obviously, I don't want to say senior citizens, but I did say it, didn't I? But I think all four of us can attest to how much yoga there is compared to when we started. And that this is a good thing. This points to the fact that there's a lot of yoga going around.
There's a lot of people who are really interested in it.
It's amazing when I have, I've had students who have said, well, I'll ask something like, well, where did you learn about yoga? Or, and I get this answer like, well, they taught it in my high school, or my kids are taking it in elementary school. And I go, really? Wow, that's cool.
Yeah.
Or I'm doing it with my goat.
Have
you seen that? Have you seen that? That's gone viral the past week.
So
yoga and goat.
That's TMI. Okay.
I can't believe the number of people that sent that to me and said, "Okay, Yogi, have you seen this? When are you going to start goat?" Oh God. Okay.
Okay.
Anyway,
Well, I do need to wind up. But one of the things I just want to say sort of quickly, and you're welcome to join the Sadhana community, or I can add you in if you want me to. But I just want to say, one of my big goals with Sadhana is to get people to meet each other in the community, because we have amazing teachers as well as a lot of new people to yoga in our community. And, my goal is to get people to meet each other so I'm super happy that we had this conversation, and now y'all know each other, and you can like pass notes behind my back. And
Where do you,
Pardon?
where do you live?
I live currently on Long Island, and I'll be moving to Philadelphia area this summer. And so that'll be nice because I get to see Joe more. She's like, I think we'll be like 100 miles apart, something like that, depending on where I end up.
It'll be like me going to visit my son at Drexel again.
Exactly. I have a lot of friends. My dad lives in the D.C. area. My aunt. I lived in Columbia, Maryland for a while, which is where Joe and I both studied with Bob Glickstein at the yoga center in Columbia, Maryland. That's like one of our common nexus. So we both lived in that area. And so I have a lot of ties into the DC area. So I'll be getting down a lot nearer to where Joe is. Anyway, okay, I better go because I have a huge project due at work. And I need to actually make some money. And I'm not going to do it teaching yoga, right?
No, not unless you're international.
Okay,
Not today, anyway.
Everybody. Bye.
Hey, bye, honey. Thank you. Bye, Matt. Bye, Joe.